go quit your babysitting gig and get yourself a real job? I mean, you know who else could teach a first grader? Second grader.
That's funny, sir. I actually applied to a few other principal jobs at other schools. I'm just waiting to hear back.
Come do a real man's job. Time to grow up, Gregory.
I will consider that, sir.
I'll take it.
All right.
That's Tyler James Williams in the hit comedy Abbott Elementary, which returned to ABC this week. Welcome back. Tonight we take a look at the nation's schools and who's not represented in our classrooms. Less than 2% of public school teachers are Black men. It's a staggering number that the American education system has grappled with for generations. So what's keeping Black men out of the classroom? That's the question we're asking as we investigate the absence of Black male teachers.
First few years of my schooling, Blackness was centered, and radically so. In the last, 20 years of my education, you see this sort of violent extraction, this violent separation for all cultures that aren't white. And I started to feel like I wasn't smart, I wasn't intelligent.
For Emir Davis, tackling inequity in public schools means changing the face of education.
The expectation is that we do not go into, especially if you're a Black male, you do not go into education because success is defined by not only title and prestige, but also the money that you earn. I knew once I got into the classroom and I taught and I saw the impact I was having on my students, I knew that's what I was designed to do.
But in 2019, Davis walked away from his calling, frustrated by a system resistant to change.
I saw that no matter how hard I worked and the good that I felt I can do inside of my classroom, that there was this sort of system that I had to exist in that was, in my mind, noticeably and arrogantly ignoring the plight of my students. And I knew there was something more that I wanted to do outside of the classroom.
And he's not alone. Last year, nearly 50% of Black teachers said they plan to leave their jobs at the end of the term, double the national average. And today, Black men make up less than 2% of public school teachers. Scholars say the lack of Black men in front of the blackboard can be traced back to the Supreme Court decision to integrate America's schools. Georgia Tech professor Dr. Joycelyn Wilson.
One of the things that took place during Brown versus Board of Education, when Black teachers and Black leadership was removed from the schools and replaced with white teachers and white leadership. This notion that Black schools under the era of segregation were a bad thing is really that's just wholly inaccurate. The schools was just the place that was used to exemplify the need to get rid of racial discrimination and segregation. So to desegregate is literally to eliminate any type of systemic racism, institutionalized racism, any type of discrimination based on race in these public schools. That's what desegregation is. Integration is literally bringing the races together in one space to learn together. Back to those unintended consequences, one of them was the anti-Black curriculum. The curriculum was not desegregated. The curriculum was not integrated. That is where we have to continue to do the work to make sure that the work that has been done around culturally relevant, culturally resilient teaching, we have to continue to make sure that that is not dismantled.
It's work Emir Davis continues as Director of Black Male Engagement at the Center for Black Educator Development. He's using his experience to reshape the culture within schools.
We want to be known for our achievement and our skill, amongst other things, but when you see us, you see us. The most successful Black Black male teachers are those that have a network of folks who have shared experiences, shared aspirations, and can push one another to persist in this profession.
Joining us now, we have 2019 National Teacher of the Year, Rodney Big Rob Robinson, an educator with over a decade of experience in the classroom who is currently Senior Advisor at Richmond Public Schools, and Andre Jackson, an assistant principal at Miami Central Senior High School and former site director with the 5,000 Role Models of Excellence mentoring program. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Again, just 2% of public school educators are Black men. This statistic is shocking but not new. Rodney, can we talk about how the history of public education plays into where we are today, looking at that statistic in 2022?
Thank you. Looking at that statistic, you have to really go back to Brown versus Board of Education. One of the unintended consequences is when the two school systems merged, 60,000 Black teachers were fired, demoted, or just simply given jobs to menial tasks. And what happened because of that is that Black students began to see that school wasn't for them. They didn't have role models in front of them in the classroom. They began to be over-disciplined, over-policed, undereducated, had lower expectations, and Black students began to hate school because they didn't see themselves reflected in the people in their school building. There's never been an intentional effort to say, we want Black teachers or we need Black teachers. And until America tends to pay that debt that is owed, we won't have that.
How do we change that 2%, raise it up to 3, raise it up to 4? I mean, what are the incremental steps we can take as a society to make improvements?
Okay, so I'll jump in. It has to become a priority. Black male educators must become a priority. So what is our goal? We have to ask ourselves that question, and we all have to be aligned in terms of society and what we're trying to do, right? So I think education right now, we're at a point where we need revolutionary change. Revolutionary change. I think we're facilitating evolutionary change, which is just a level of continuous improvement. It has to be a targeted focus where we're targeting Black male educators. Being a teacher is not really a conversation that was held in my household, and I don't think it's a conversation that's held in households in terms of the value of education.
We need to be intentional. Like you said, we need to be intentional in our goals. We need to start recruiting young Black boys at a young age and tell them they can be teachers. I saw a list that had the top 100 fifth graders in basketball. Why can't we have the top 100 elementary school kids who want to be teachers? Let's be intentional about what we do. Let's expose them to what they can be.
What does revolutionary change look like?
Revolutionary change looks like diversity. The reality is so many people are benefiting from our current system. And until we get more voices at the top of the system who have all been the ones who've been traumatized and hurt by it, then we can get those people in the rooms to make some decisions. Then we can have significant change in education. Far too many people don't see anything wrong with our system because it benefits the majority. And so we need to start with, just like you said, creating better experiences for Black boys, for Black girls in our school system so that they can see it as a place for a career and not a place of trauma.
When we look at recruitment, when we look at retention, when we look at increasing these numbers, how does the culture within public schools hurt recruiting and retaining Black men? Andre?
Well, number one, that's a loaded question, and I think it's a lot to unpack in terms of how the culture can kind of push Black men away. There has to be a safe space for Black men. I think oftentimes we get caught up in a one-size-fits-all type of approach to our instruction, and that one-size-fits-all does not necessarily always benefit Black male instructors. But I think the number one thing that comes to mind, especially in 2022, is the pay. The pay of educators across the nation is suffering drastically. So we're in a position right now where the economy has outpaced the profession.
Is it simply a matter of offering higher salaries, offering, different programs at a federal level? Rodney, do you want to talk to me about how the nation can address that from a financial standpoint?
Well, yeah, there's several things the federal government can do. For one thing, all the funding in the American Recovery Act should be just the minimum level of funding you give the public schools every year. It shouldn't be just a 1 or 2 year bonus for districts to add on. Every school every year should get that level of funding. But then also the federal government needs to create programs. It goes back to that word intentional. What are we doing to support our HBCUs? Are we creating alternative routes to licensure to help Black folks that have degrees that want to get an education? And are we forgiving student loans? I think that's a bigger issue. We know that so many Black people have taken on extraordinary amounts of student loans in the college. And when you talk about education, even the Wall Street Journal says it's just not a smart move to go into education with the amount of student loans people are taking out. So the federal government needs to come in on the front end and provide scholarships, go to high school levels, provide dual enrollment mentoring programs to get kids involved in education. It requires a whole-scale effort. After World War II, the United States created the Marshall Plan to rebuild Europe. I think we need a Marshall Plan for education. And part of that plan is a specific role in increasing the number of Black teachers and also increasing the number of brown teachers. Our Hispanic population is growing and they have even lower numbers of teachers. And so we really need the federal government to take a all hands on deck approach and to making sure we have teachers who look like our students, because right now that is definitely not the case.
Rodney, Andre, thank you both for being with us today, sharing your experiences and really shining a light on this 2% and how we can find solutions in society.